All right, look. This professional video game player, Cheese Speedrunning, basically put up a challenge to me. He basically said to me, if I'm so confident in making these proclamations about the meaning of life, about what it means to lead a meaningful life, why don't I just come out and say it? And I sympathize with the situation he's in, but there is obviously an undercurrent in much of what he has to say to me where he feels, who am I to judge what he's doing with his life as meaningless? Now look, I've made videos in the past directly answering the question of what is the meaning of life and what does it mean to lead a meaningful life. But in these kinds of man-to-man, face-to-face situations, most of the judgments we have to make are subjective and relative to the situation that we're in such a way that we never really need to take it that far. We all know on some level what matters here is not my idea of what it is to lead a meaningful life. It's his idea. It's what I can get him to agree to. But you know what? I think Cheese already fundamentally agrees with me, right? I think Cheese knows that playing the same video game again and again and again for 80 hours a week. He protested against my saying 40 hours a week. He said, get on my level, that he plays the game for 80 hours a week. Playing Super Mario 64, playing something that was designed as children's entertainment for 80 hours a week. What do we have to compare that to come to practical, real-world conclusions about the meaning of life or leading a meaningful life? Let me ask you something, Cheese. What if you decided that in the next couple of years you were going to go to medical school and study to become a medical doctor? Let's just say you weren't entirely confident that you would be able to get into university, that you'd be able to do that, but you're going to start studying now. You're going to start taking 40 hours a week to sit down with the textbooks and memorize them. Memorize what you need to know to become a medical doctor. Now, let's not glorify or glamorize it. What are you going to memorize? The name of every bone in the human hand. The Latin names for a lot of the different muscles that comprise the body, right? You're going to have to learn a lot of organic chemistry. You're going to have to memorize a lot of really boring facts to go to medical school. But what I'm saying to you here is, maybe you're not in medical school. Maybe you're just thinking about it for the future. And you decide to start studying to that level, to that extent. And maybe you're partly studying because you want to decide if you're really committed to this. You want to decide if going to medical school will make you happy or make you miserable. You want to decide if this is meaningful enough, that you care about this enough to really put in the effort, to really memorize, these boring facts. Okay? Let's not glamorize what it means to be a doctor. Being a medical doctor, it's a lot of manual labor. It's a lot of incredibly boring and repetitious tasks day in and day out. When I was doing humanitarian work myself in Cambodia and Laos, I met medical doctors who had volunteered to go out to these countries. Also, Myanmar, Burma next door. I met medical doctors who volunteered to go out there. And if you got them in an honest moment, a lot of them would say to you, yeah, they volunteered to do humanitarian work in a third world country because it was so boring. It was so boring and so meaningless to be a medical doctor in Europe, in Western Europe. It was like, yeah, they did all this hard work, they learned all this medicine, and then they sit in an office, and every day they just have elderly people coming in complaining about diarrhea. And it's like predominantly medical care for elderly people with the same simple illnesses, the same simple ailments, again and again and again. Of course, if you're a specialized doctor, if you do heart attacks, you just deal with heart attacks. If you help women who are pregnant, giving birth, you just deal with that one problem. People with that who are coming to the hospital for that one reason or coming to your office for that one reason. Day after day after day, again and again. It's very repetitious. It is in many obvious ways quite meaningless and quite depressing to be a medical doctor or even to go through med school to become a doctor. But you, Cheese, you know it's way more meaningful than what you're doing right now. You wouldn't even debate this with me. And you know what, Cheese? I think, at one point in his video, he said that a lot of the things I was saying, his own father had said to him in the past. You know what, Cheese? I think your father would say to you today, look, kid, you're smart. Why don't you go back to university and become a medical doctor? If you show this video to your father, you talk about this with your father. If you say, Dad, this guy on the internet, he was saying today that what I should really do is stop playing video games for 80 hours a week. Let's just cut it in half. Let's just say, Cheese, let's say you should take 40 hours a week and study the textbooks for medical school. You should start preparing to go to medical school to become a doctor. This guy on the internet said I should do that because that would be more meaningful. I think your father would agree, Cheese, and I think you would agree. That's why you're weak in this argument. That's why you're defensive. That's why you have to get hostile and talk about how much money you make playing video games. We both know money doesn't matter. If you could make more money playing video games than being a medical doctor, that doesn't mean playing video games is a meaningful life, not compared to being a medical doctor, right? How is being a medical doctor meaningful? It's meaningful in two ways. Because you make yourself into a better person, right? And you make the world a better place. Two really simple criteria for what it is to lead a meaningful life. You can make a lot of money working in a slaughterhouse. You can make a lot of money standing there with a kind of fancy chainsaw, carving up cow carcasses every day. Gruesome work. Do you think that makes you into a better person? Do you think that makes the world a better place? No. Don't come to me and say, but I make a ton of money working in a slaughterhouse. Maybe so. Maybe so. We were talking about the meaning of life here. We weren't talking about how to make the most money. You can make a lot of money out of drug dealing. You can make a lot of money out of real estate. You can make a lot of money working at a slaughterhouse. No doubt. Okay? You want to come to me and talk about the meaning of life? You've got to compare video games to something else. And right now, for you at age 24, we're making the comparison between you buckling down and doing speed runs in Mario 64 and you buckling down and hitting the textbooks to study medical science, prepare to become a medical doctor. And you know what? Studying medical science, studying those textbooks is so meaningful. It's so meaningful that even if you quit or even if you fail, you would look back on that as a meaningful time in your life, as something really great you did. All right? If you did this preparation, if you started memorizing this stuff and learning this stuff, and then let's say you gave up or the university rejects you, for some reason you decide you can't go through with being you're afraid of blood or something, there's some reason why you stopped doing it, you would still look back and say, wow, remember that 1 year where I spent the whole year, 40 hours a week, really studying those medical textbooks, learning about chemistry and the history of medical science and human anatomy and the progress of diseases. Wow, that's something meaningful I'm going to carry with me for the rest of my life. And if you really did memorize that stuff, you would have that knowledge, you would have that wisdom with you. You would wear it, you would inhabit it for the rest of your life. It would be something positive and meaningful for you forever, even if the project was a failure, even if you failed, right? And we all know that's not true about video games. Cheese speedrunning, you are the one person in a million who makes money, who makes a little bit of money out of playing video games, okay? The percentage of athletes at the gym who make money out of exercise is much, much higher than the percentage of gamers who make money out of video gaming, okay? And you know, Cheese, spending 80 hours a week playing video games, it's hard to justify that as meaningful, even if you make money, even if you win, and if you don't make money, and if you fail, you've already conceded the point, Cheese. It would be horrendously meaningless. It would be a terrible source of regret in your life, right? These are the kinds of practical questions we've got about the meaning of life. When I was a kid, I played video games, all right? You know what this is? This is a high school level history textbook in Chinese. Okay? Right now, for me at age 41, this textbook still has things to teach me. Right? High school level textbook. It's not that sophisticated. I think you saw it. There's Napoleon on the cover, right? So this is going to tell the history of Napoleon at a level appropriate for Chinese high school students who maybe have never even heard of Napoleon. It's not going to talk about Napoleon and his attempt to conquer Egypt. It's not going to talk about Napoleon and the war he fought in Haiti in the Caribbean. It's not going to question profoundly Napoleon's position on slavery. It's not going to reflect on the various attempts to assassinate Napoleon. It's not going to explore philosophically the extent to which Napoleon was an enemy of democracy, someone who destroyed democracy, someone who subverted the hopes of the French Revolution and of the Directorate in the Revolutionary period, as opposed to the extent to which he sincerely was someone who wanted democracy but failed along the way in getting there, in achieving understanding. It's not going to ask those profound questions about democracy, slavery, or any of the rest of it, okay? But this book, even at this shallow, simple, high school level, has a lot to teach me, all right? I would still benefit. I'd still become a better person now if I memorized the facts in this textbook instead of memorizing the layout of the levels in Mario 64. Instead of memorizing the video game Zillion for the Sega Master System. And when I was a child, that was a video game I played enough that I had all the levels memorized. That video game had secret lasers you couldn't see at the start of the game, and you could learn where they were, because if you stepped through the laser, it would set off an alarm. Kind of like a really simple stealth game from the 8-bit video game era. I memorized where all the lasers were in that game, so I could move around the game. I could probably speed run that game still to this day, all right? But the point is not just in some abstract sense that it would be more meaningful to memorize a textbook like this, even given that it's propaganda. You know, if I read this book, I'm going to learn the Chinese perspective on history. I'm going to learn how Chinese people think about, you know, Napoleon and slavery in the United States of America and all these issues. It's not going to be the same kind of propaganda in an American textbook or a Spanish textbook or a French textbook, okay? The point is not just that this is more meaningful or that this is part of a meaningful life in an abstract sense, okay? I would be a better person today if I had taken 40 hours a week to memorize my high school history textbook instead of spending however many hours playing video games. And still today, I mean, this would be a huge language challenge, but I would learn the way people discuss these things in Chinese. I would learn the Chinese vocabulary for slavery and democracy. That'd be very intellectually stimulating. Okay? But still today for you, Cheese, I think you know, I think you feel it. If you sat down and spent 40 hours a week memorizing a high school history textbook, that would, here and now, even at your current age, at age 24, would make you a better person. And then you would live your whole life with that knowledge memorized. You would inhabit that knowledge. You would be able to muster and make use of that knowledge. Day in and day out at a moment's notice. You would memorize the exact dates in history when different events happen. You would have memorized certain political and historical facts from the history of the world, even if it was at such a basic level. And you know, with just a few weeks, if you're really doing 40 hours a week, 80 hours a week, you know what levels of learning, what levels of erudition you're capable of, whether it's in English, Spanish, or Chinese. You know that if you put the work in, you could do it, okay? It would be a more meaningful life for you. It would be part of you becoming a better person, and it would enable you to make a positive difference in the world in a way that you never can sitting at a couch holding a Nintendo 64 controller, acting out a fantasy from your childhood, playing a game made for children's entertainment as a grown adult again and again and again. Get uncomfortable. Get ambitious. Yearn to be a better person. Yearn to make the world a better place, even if you don't know how to do it. Get hungry for a meaningful life, even if you don't know what the meaning of life is. I can totally accept that being a medical doctor is meaningless, but not compared to playing Nintendo 64 games. I think my own high school history textbooks were propaganda and they were bullshit. And this textbook too would probably piss me off the more I'd read of it. I'd hate it. I would hate it and say, this is just propaganda. This is just bullshit. This isn't really being honest. This isn't really examining the issues of who Napoleon was and why he matters in history. I'd probably think it's terribly hypocritical and dishonest. I still have a lot to learn from it. I still have the humility to recognize there's a lot for me to learn, and there would be a lot here that'd be valuable for me even to memorize and carry with me for the rest of my life. Right? Get uncomfortable. Get ambitious. Yearn to be more, do more, know more, even if you don't know what the destination you're working towards is yet.